Hi Gina.
Hi Ione, hi everyone. I'm Gina, the senior editor of Polyester.
And I'm Ione, the founding editor-in-chief of Polyester, and this is the Polyester Podcast, a feminist pop culture podcast dissecting the discourse on a weekly basis. I don't know why I pronounced that.
Like you've never said it before.
T.
Before we start, if you're a fan of this podcast, please make sure to like, rate, subscribe and review. And if you really love us, you can sign up for a podcast membership or you can join our WhatsApp chat. Get access to our research each week and get on our Instagram close friends for only £3 a month. Do we have any reviews, Ione?
And our Substack should be launching this week.
Oh yeah, secret Substack happening.
And we're going to have a secret podcast on there.
Secret.
Anyway. Yes, we have a review. 5 stars. One of my favourite cultural commentary podcasts. Each week, Ione and Gina are magically there to bring a fresh perspective and bless my ears. That is by Hannah Crosby. In the UK.
Hannah Crosby?
Yeah, Hannah Crosby.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Hannah.
A celeb review.
A celeb review.
You can't believe it.
Oh, if we had like a sound effects par now.
We can just do them ourselves.
We are good. What other sound effects can you do?
I don't want, no. I'm not getting into
You're
that.
not going down that road.
So, today's episode theme, topic, subject, came about from, was I WhatsApp ranting to you or was it in person?
I feel like it was on person.
Yeah, I can't be asked to talk about stuff like that on WhatsApp.
No, you never bought
WhatsApp is just like
stickers.
Back and forth.
Stickers and complaints.
Yeah. Of which, what was I saying?
About what?
The election.
You were talking to me about the election.
Oh, come on, Gina.
I don't know what you
together, man.
I don't know what your conversations are.
With you?
I think it was to the room.
No, it was to you
Me
specifically because no one else heard it. Because then you went, I think you've got a podcast subject there.
I don't know, my brain's gone. I think it was early in the morning.
You're an absolute cow.
I'm not a cow. Why are you shouting at me for the same thing
You're
can't
shouting.
remember?
I'm not even raising my voice. Anyway.
Why are you having a...
I can remember it. I was just trying to include you.
Right, go on then. What was it?
So it was when there was a big push. Why are you laughing?
You said, I'm trying to include you.
I am.
Yeah, it's cute.
Anyway, it was when there was a big push to register to vote and loads of people were doing Instagram stories and posts that was like, just register to vote.
Oh, I remember now.
Okay. And then what then, Gina?
And then you said, what's the point in just telling people to register to vote if nobody knows what they need to vote for?
Well, not need to vote for, but yeah, like, it feels like for the first time in our lives as people of voting age, like since we were 18, I mean, I don't know why I said it like that.
No, that's right.
There's not like a clear person to vote for, a party to vote for, I mean, in terms of that Labour, a lot of people are like disaffected to Keir Starmer's Labour, especially young people and especially left-leaning people. But on the other hand, obviously our generation most keenly have like experienced the negatives of splitting the vote. So when we were 16 was when the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition came into place, because for anyone that like is too young to know, I guess, the Liberal Democrats really campaigned on abolishing student fees, was it? Or like lowering
we're
them?
going to get rid of student fees, we're going to like be more green, we're going to be the ideal party, we're going to be more left-wing than Labour, so vote for us.
And then they just got into bed with the Tories and chaos has ensued for 14 years.
14 years?
Yeah.
God, it sounds horrible when you put it like that, doesn't it?
And then the next election that I remember was the Ed Miliband, yeah?
Yeah, in uni, with the bacon sandwich.
Yeah, and that was the first time we could vote.
Yeah.
In general election.
Yeah.
And that was disappointing. And then...
Oh, to say the least. Didn't he have a brother?
Yeah, David, right? David Miliband or Dave Miliband? Yeah, and then we've had like 6 years of hell.
And we've had other elections in that space.
Yeah, we've had so many elections, I don't even know how many.
Yeah, and we had Jeremy Corbyn. It'd be remiss to say that to not mention that.
Yeah, I was going to say a glimmer of hope, but yeah, it was quickly dashed, wasn't it?
I don't know, I felt like it was a couple of years of everyone being like, just.
Yeah, but nothing happened.
It's sad, isn't it?
I saw a tweet that was like, oh, I remember canvassing for Jeremy Corbyn in the 2019 election and door knocking and think, wow, I'm going to be part of a brighter future. And I was wrong.
No, literally, that's like what it's felt like. Now, like, the election's like rolled around again and it's weird to be in that position to be like, actually, I'm just tired of election. Like, usually, I'm tired of election.
I'm tired of election. End of podcast.
It usually gets like around this time, like I'm usually like enlivened, like around Jeremy, or like before that when I first voted, I think I voted Green Party because I was like, they're the ones who most suit me. And this is the first year I'm like, I just don't give a fuck. Like obviously I do.
Yeah.
Like so much to the point that I feel
that there's no options.
Yeah, there's no options. Usually we have like that outlier who's like the person to vote for.
Yeah, I hate the like apoliticism of it that rolls around this time of like an election campaign where it's like, just vote. Like people fought for your right to vote. People fought for this. And yeah, I agree, everyone should vote, but like, why is it being rammed down everyone's throats to like vote when people aren't actually talking about like policies? And like, I feel like also on my social media, which is fair enough, I just see like all the negatives of Labour and like not necessarily like the positives of Green, for example, or like other options, or yeah, how it's at this point where it's like, oh well, if you don't vote, then you can't like complain.
You can't talk about it if you haven't spent your vote.
And then was it you that didn't vote for Brexit? No, you didn't vote
I was
for
on holiday,
Brexit.
Yes.
It was so bad.
I was private.
It's out there now, love.
I was on holiday, yeah, and also was on holiday for the mayoral elections. It's just been...
Fuck's sake, Gina.
But that one wasn't my fault because I moved house after the time that I could register for a postal vote.
You didn't have to admit that, and you just have.
Yeah, but that one wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault at all. I moved to London in the like nebulous time when I was like too late for the postal vote, but I was too early to have been like I would have been able to do an in-person vote if I was in the country, but I wasn't. I was in Greece. Anyway,
we're combating this like murky thing of like on elections coming up.
By telling you to vote.
No, just by actually going through the manifestos and also like talking about the issues that have arisen that I feel like are particularly pertinent for like people within our communities and that are maybe swaying people away from the Labour vote in particular and where they actually stand on it. Because yeah, I feel like this isn't going to be a co-sign of Labour, by the way, like it's kind of making it sound like it is, because I feel like we see the headlines like J.K. Rowling, Keir Starmer agrees to talk to J.K. Rowling, etc., etc., etc. But there's like not that much in-depth coverage for like our audience, our community, our listeners, and also just like having a space to be honest about the fact that it's not a good election.
It's fucked. Like in all the research is like, yeah, your vote won't count if you don't vote Tory or Labour. Like, vote's not going to count anyway because everyone's going to vote Labour. So here's what you can do with your vote if you don't want to vote Labour, because they are doing some really horrible things. You can protest your vote by voting Green. Like, won't really mean anything. You can protest your vote by not voting. Won't really mean anything. If you want to go in and spoil your ballot, you can do that. Won't really mean anything. Like, it just adds to the apathy of it. You're like, fucking
great.
Fab then. But then when I was reading, and I feel like that's kind of like what's been driving me away from like engaging with this election. Yeah. And a lot of my peers as well, like from wanting to like think about it, talk about it. Also, like, I was just blindsided by Labour as well, I think, a bit, especially, like, being from Wales, like, it's such, like, a Labour-only country, and I was brought up with only doing that, so, like, when the election first got announced, I was in the camp being, like, I hate fucking Keir Starmer, but I will vote Labour, just to, like, make sure they win, and now we're in this weird, like, in-between nether zone where it's, like, you don't have to vote for Labour because Labour's going to win anyway. So what do you actually care about? And like now it's the time to like read through these policies and actually pick them apart and see what we do care about.
Yeah, and I from a similar similar family background, I guess, where like my mum absolutely adores New Labour, and so she loves Keir Starmer, and she thinks that Labour are going to get in and like change the country, and it's going to be amazing, and we're all going to be like skipping down the street singing to each other. Which, you know what, that would be great. But let's see.
But I do think it's interesting, like what you just said about how we're seeing like these like really garish headlines, like something in the research was a screenshot from Twitter. I won't call out the person who has tweeted it, but like someone tweeted being like, oh, this is going to be, Keir Starmer's going to talk about transgender identities and change like the law around it without like specifying what he's doing or what the Labour Party's manifesto actually says about that. And then someone's like quote tweeted immediately being like, so this is section 28, like everything's going to change, like fuck Labour. But when you actually like read through their manifesto, they are very openly improving things for trans people.
Well, yeah.
Like as much as Labour are going to do.
I think it's like, yeah, complicated when it comes to transness for sure. But then I also feel like how there's a part in the research where it was like a couple of years ago or something, the deputy councillor of the Tories or whatever, I don't know who it was like, oh, the next election will be one on culture wars, like, and it feels like we're kind of just playing into that hand. Not we, as in like, you know, the people that are listening to this, but like the country is playing into like this by putting so much stock. Not that it's not important, but you know what I mean? But like allowing ourselves to be like grabbed by the clickbait or grabbed by all of this stuff. Like I watch a lot of morning television, and for like 3 weeks, which is half of this general election campaign, because it was an election called only 6 weeks ago, they were just fucking shouting at Rishi Sunak for leaving D-Day celebrations early. So it's like they're playing it on every side, do you know what I mean? Like they're playing into like the culture wars that kind of don't really affect our generation because we don't like shag World War II as much as other people.
Yeah, and it's like, also that's not in the manifesto, like how many hours are we going to dedicate to
How many hours are you going to spend?
How many days should we wear the poppy? If your XL bully is not wearing the poppy, I'm going to vote Labour this year.
But like, as in they're playing it that way. Like they literally are playing it that way for like, you know, people that maybe more traditionally vote Conservative, or like people that, yeah, are like proud patriots, whatever. And then for us, they're playing it on like trans issues, Palestine, which isn't a culture war issue, but you know what I mean? And like all of these like hot topic issues, it feels very like of the now. Obviously Palestine isn't, and neither are trans people, but it feels like it is an election that's being played out on social media in a way that we haven't seen previously, the extent of it and like the intensity of it.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Another thing that can be said about that is like Labour's TikToks.
Yeah, which I got caught out when reading the research at laughing at.
What was it? Describe it.
It was, what's her name? The one who does Surprise.
I don't know.
Cilla Black.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's just describing a TikTok and I'm just fully pissing myself at work. And it's her going, surprise. And it's the caption's like POV Rishi Sunak turn up to send you to war.
It's not fucking funny, is it? Yeah, that's like...
I'm so starved of TikTok that I can read about a TikTok and I'm like, yes.
It's the rage bait election, like, rather than the clickbaity election. Like, because another thing, yeah, this national service thing, like, the Tories know young people are going to kick off about that and never vote for it. And then you sometimes listen to LBC when I'm in cabs or whatever, and they're going, well, I think young people should go and do national service because young people now don't know what it's like to work.
I'm sick of the fucking war. Like, I'm sick of the war being brought up. My whole life the war's been brought up being like, your granddad's generation went, oh, my granddad didn't even go to war. I'm that young. He didn't go to war. He wasn't there. He'll just like to talk about it. And I know for a fact my parents' generation didn't go to war. That wasn't a thing. But people are always like, people don't know how like hard people used to have it. It's like you said, like people died for your right to vote. Like, okay. True.
Yeah.
But like that conversation's only applicable to the issues in this country for voting, in the fact that they've brought in like you have to have your ID to vote now.
Yeah, which is so bad.
Which is fucked. And then like all the migration issues and stuff like that, I think that's valid conversation to be had. Like I don't know if it's here or in America, but like if you go to prison you can't vote anymore.
If you're like a felon, you can't vote. So like Trump can't vote, but he can run.
That's crazy. Like, and loads of, we also like talk.
But also people in prison should be allowed to vote. Like,
yeah, they're still people.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them vote.
And also abolish prison.
Well, that's the thing, like as soon as we start, and we've talked about this before, like as soon as we start like rolling back our rights on anything, that'll eventually come back down to that as well, because it's removing our human rights, which is interesting because the part of the Tory manifesto is that they want to take us out of the European something council.
Yeah, let's get into it. I mean, also I think what's frustrating about the, you know, this person died for your right to vote is like, it's just like a stick to beat young people with, or like people that are disenfranchised with the options available. It's like a weird guilt trippy thing, and it's like, well, all right, fair enough, but we should also be able to demand better than the options we're given.
And we should be able to protest in the way of not using that vote as well. Like I think if someone was protesting to the point of giving me the vote, I'd like to imagine that person would also understand the reasons why
you wouldn't
want to vote anymore.
I don't know. I think everyone... I don't know. I don't want to be like, I think everyone should vote. But I think if you can, you should. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway.
That's the thing. We don't know.
Let's go to a break.
And we're back.
There you go, Gina. Bet you love that. Okay.
I did love that. Yeah.
We spoke about fuck all for 15 minutes there. Hope you
we
enjoyed
did
it. No, I feel like we got into good points. So, Labour's 5 missions to rebuild Britain are kickstart economic growth to secure the highest sustained growth in the G7 with good jobs and productivity growth in every part of the country, making everyone, not just a few, better off. 2, make Britain a clean energy superpower to cut bills, create jobs and deliver security with cheaper zero carbon electricity by 2030, accelerating to net zero. So they're packaging this as that they're going to have like a national energy provider, like country owned. 3, take back our streets by halving serious violent crime and raising confidence in the police and criminal justice system to its highest levels.
They're bringing back the ASBO. They're bringing back the ASBO.
Are they actually?
Yeah. And if, dear listener, if you do not know what the ASBO was, it was like the original meme. Like, it's called an anti-social behaviour order, and it could be like given to people that they'd have it like on their record then. So if they like did something wrong or like arrested by the police again, like immediately went against them and I don't know, carted straight off to prison. Like, what, I didn't really know what they did, I think. And then it became like a joke being like, ASBO Britain, everyone's
if you got an ASBO, it's like you couldn't go certain places, like you couldn't go within like 100 metres of a shopping centre or something.
What?
Or like places where there was known to be like...
Do you remember when they banned hoodies?
Hug a hoodie?
Yeah, they were like, no. They were like, I remember my gran always used to wear like this fluffy fleece with a hood, and she was like, I can't wear my hood to Tesco anymore, they've banned hoodies.
Anyway.
Crazy, sorry.
4, break down barriers to opportunity by reforming our childcare and education systems to make sure there is no class ceiling on the ambitions of young people in Britain. 5, build an NHS fit for the future that is there when everyone needs it, with fewer lives lost to the biggest killers, in a fairer Britain where everyone lives well for longer. So Dazed, James, how do you say his last name? Greek has broken this down into like the good and the bad, which is really useful. So the good, they say, is banning no-fault evictions, introducing new worker protections, annoying people who send their kids to private schools, so they're introducing a VAT on private school that would then help public services, and being marginally less evil than the Tories. Dazed's point is kind of like the strongest case for talking about the lesser of two evils and voting Labour is that Labour won't pull us out of the European Court of Human Rights, which is what you were saying, Gina, which is something that like protects our rights, and a large part of it is not a large part of it, but a large part of it for like our community would be the rights of trans people. So a lot of what the Tories do in terms of talking about like, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, they have to issue it as guidance because they can't actually legislate towards it because it would be in breach of like human rights, basically. The Tories would pull us out of this. So if they pulled us out, it means that they could like bring in actual legislation against like the trans community.
Oh, so villainous.
Against loads of other people as well. So there's that.
Yeah, it ties into the Rwanda scheme that everyone knows about as well. Like that is literally illegal against human rights.
So yeah, the Rwanda scheme is to send asylum seekers to Rwanda as kind of like a holding ground between here and like seeking asylum. So then the manifesto also pledges to reform gender recognition law, which is what you were saying, Gina, which would make it easier and less intrusive for people to change their legal gender and introduce a full trans-inclusive ban on conversion therapy. Seems to rule out changing the Equalities Act so that it's easier to exclude trans people from single-sex spaces. So what they've kind of said is, so where it's all kicked off like this week, well, last week now, let me get to it, is that J.K. Rowling, who's been like quite a prominent Labour Party donor for the amount of time she's been rich and famous, I guess, has now said that she cannot vote for Labour, will not vote for Labour because of their policies towards trans people.
Yeah, so she's basically the Tory government in their manifesto is saying that they would stop gender teachings in schools, and they would also make it so that they would change the Equality Act. So where it says it would protect women, it would specifically specify women who are born as female, which obviously would mean that trans people are excluded from the Equality Act, which means that they can be discriminated against and also like crimed against, like without it being seen as like a hate crime. And then what Labour are basically just saying we wouldn't do that. Like the opposite of being like a positive policy. They also have said that they'd make it easier for trans people to get into gender GRC. What does that stand for? Gender
recognition something.
Sorry, that I do not know that. I should. But they would say they'd make it easier. So right now you have to like get approval from your spouse.
If you have one.
You have to get like life evidence from multiple sources that say that you are trans and you've been living in that gender identity, and then you have to present it to a board of like experts, whereas Labour is saying, right, we just make you say that you feel that you've been doing that. You'd have 2 years to reflect before we put you into GRC, and you'd only have to explain that to one doctor. Before, last year, they said they were just going to scrap it entirely, and then there was like obviously this weird like turfy kickback online. So they've made it this, which is most like hopefully appealing to both sides. But J.K. Rowling's turned around and gone, nah, fuck this. Like, you guys need to be TERFs or I'm not voting, and I'm going to take my little band of merry TERFs away from you. I'm going to take away my donation money.
Yeah, which is, and she's basically, so Rachel Reeves said that she'd want to meet with her, but then J.K. Rowling has said that the meeting was conditional on Labour First meeting with like all these TERFy groups. And then Keir's obviously being a little bitch about it, saying that I respect her. She's made some really important points. I'd welcome that discussion. Why?
It's just fucking grim. Like there's an article from Gay Times in this research.
Oh, I think it's basically saying that like in reality, only 8% of people polled said that they passionately follow the conversation around trans communities.
It says YouGov polling shows that despite Westminster's fixation on trans and non-binary issues, 2/3 of Britons pay little or no attention to such discourse around them, and just 8% say that they pay a lot of attention. And I also think like of that 8% are probably people who are pro.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, of course. But then it goes back to what we were saying about in the Neurospicy episode, where it was something like 20% of people 20% of users on Twitter account for 80% of the posts or something similar. Like, go back to the episode if you want to hear the actual stat. That can also be applied to like the trans debate on Twitter. Like, it's so toxic because there's such a huge like community, whatever. It's not a community, you know what I mean? Network of TERFs. And they also employ bots and all of that kind of stuff.
And it's also these women and people who have money.
Yeah.
But like literally like J.K. Rowling, where they can be like, well, I'm going to pull it out if you don't pay attention to me.
Mm-hmm. Another interesting point is that like so many Labour councillors, members of the Labour Party and Labour MPs have like been forced or have willingly left the party because of Palestine. So they lost a lot of votes in the local elections, is it? Like the councillor elections.
Yeah, the mayor was not mayoral, but
it was mayoral and something else, which was the first time that I've personally voted Green. So like throughout my whole adulthood, yeah, there's always been the like, do the Green vote. Like also I'm from Brighton, but like my constituency isn't Brighton where I live, but Brighton was like the first place to get a Green MP in. So I feel like especially in that environment as well, there was a lot of like talk about Greens. And when I moved to London and there was the 2015 election, a lot of like my peers voted Green and stuff like that, and I never did because I always like believed that like Labour would be better, like not just the lesser of two evils but actually better. But like as Days say, they're just like fundamentally setting out like a right-wing vision for the future of Britain on like economically and like in terms of the NHS, for example. Like they also haven't they at one point ruled out privatising the NHS, and now they've rolled that back to saying that we need the use of private services in order to make the NHS work, which is like absolute bullshit.
So it's just really cruel and unfair that this party that has historically stood against these things
is now
it's like backpedaling so much. Not even backpedaling. You're not pedaling back on anything. You're just fucking being horrible.
You're just being nasty little man.
Innit? You're just being fucking Keir Starmer's personal point of view.
I doubt that's true. They're trying to like do what they think will win, and it will win. That's the thing. But I think a lot of people that vote, this is just in general, don't have to like necessarily access these services that are like contingent on an election. So like the NHS or like immigration services, or even like schooling. Do you know what I mean? All of these things, you have to be involved in them to see how they've like systematically been stripped away over the last 14 years. Like, I'm sure our generation is getting into it now with like public schools. But like, if you're not constantly in and out of the NHS, or if you're not constantly having to deal with immigration services, you're not going to feel like the acute, what's the word? Badness. Like the acute
downfall.
Downfall of it, yeah, 100%. And like how much it's got harder, especially post-COVID, to get anything done within these systems that are meant to be there to serve us. And now we're being faced with like a Labour option that doesn't really do much to curtail that, or it claims to, but it's just like full of smoke and mirrors. Like the energy thing, we're going to bring in an energy, like a nationally owned energy provider, is really that they just pay private companies public money to run their services.
Yeah, and to make it like a bit cheaper for the everyman, which is like, that's not going to help anyone in the long run.
And it's the same with train services. Like they've said they're nationalised, but then it's just they'll have to pay the private companies to run them.
Yeah, such a misuse of words.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Green Party have come forward and been like, no, we would nationalise it, as it would be owned by the government, and we wouldn't like be renting the trains from the train company to get them to run the service and pay them to do it. We would buy it all out and it would be publicly owned. And
I think to round this off, it's obviously just like important to say that we don't have the answer to it. Like, I feel like even though we've sat through and read through these like 40 pages of research now, it's like I don't really feel any clearer of what is the best outcome of this. Like, obviously Labour are going to win. So for Americans like listening, or everyone, it's like they're going to win in a landslide vote, apparently. Like, all the polling is showing it, all of this, all of that, all of that. So we know what the actual outcome is likely to be. But in terms of like where we fit into it, it still doesn't really feel that much clearer.
Yeah, it just feels like
rendering this whole podcast pointless.
Yeah, so we will start this podcast and everything you need to know, and then what you need to know is that it's fucked. There's no way of winning.
Back to whatever you said at the beginning.
If you want to spend your voting day not in a queue at the voting booth.
No, I think people should vote. You can't tell people not to vote.
I'm not telling people not to vote. I'm saying that if you don't want to, I think that's fine. Like in this specific election anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know.
God, we could talk for hours on this, I think.
Yeah, 100. Well, that's the thing. It just ends up going round and round in circles. So I guess we'll see what happens on Thursday. But don't vote for TERFs. Don't vote for people that are, supportive of the genocide in Palestine.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like, hopefully, like you can listen to this episode and you can hear like what actual these parties stand for and make an informed decision on what you want to do.
I mean, we haven't even covered what's in the Tory manifesto, really. I mean, you did a bit.
I also don't bother.
If you're voting Tory, why are you listening to this podcast?
I bet there are.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some secret rats.
Well, if you're there,
get out.
Be a gold member. Use your money wisely.
And with that, we are finished. Thank you to everyone for listening. I hope this has at least soothed you, if not informed you.
At least it's there's something here for you to relate to. Like, nobody really fucking knows what's going on.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, we're not. Yeah.
No, but we know what's going on, but nobody really has the answers.
Yeah, and thank you to Siham for the research, and to Olivia for editing, and to special guest Bridget for sound teching.
Thank you, Ione.
And to all of the listeners. I already said thank you to you, I think.
That's fine. I'm just saying it to you back.
Just saying it, why wouldn't you say it to me back?
What?
Nothing.
Bye.
See you around next week when we'll have a new government. Bye!